So I've come to an awful conclusion, and I hope that I'm wrong, but I think I'm right, and I want to know what you think. First, let me apologize for the delay today. I woke up at 7 with a migraine and had to try to get myself, take my medicine, try to get back to sleep. And by the time I got up at 11, it was, well, it's now 12:40 as I'm recording this now. All right, so here's my horrible conclusion, and I hope I'm wrong. It's by design. And what I mean by that is that what Russia is doing day over day in attacking Ukraine civilians in their homes, it's not just harassment to make them rise up against the population. It is actually trying to destroy their cities, to create environmental catastrophes where they can't actually function anymore. It's genocidal. Well, whether they kill them or just destroy all their buildings and have them have to be refugees somewhere or whatever, it's trying to destroy the civilization that is Ukraine. Ukrainian air defense shot down or suppressed 291 air targets overnight, including 288 Shahed-type drones, 3 Iskander cruise missiles. Main target was Kyiv, but there was 317 that were lobbed at Ukraine, and it did a lot of damage last night. This is what Russia's response to our desire for peace looks like, Zelensky commented on the overnight strike on Kyiv, and you can see the damage everywhere. That is exactly what Russia wants. They want more of that. The destruction, it's intentional. Again, the use of the term orc, I've resisted saying that because I don't want to dehumanize, but it just seems to be that the Russians bring destruction in their wake. Veronica was blown out of her 9th floor residential building during a Russian strike. Veronica believes she fell out together with her bed, which may have cushioned the fall, leaving her with only a broken leg. She still doesn't know if her parents are okay. She's blown out of her house, out the window, out through the wall of the apartment. 9th floor. She survived mercifully, but this is what the Russians are bringing to Ukraine. Son, daughter, and 2 grandchildren are under the rubble. An elderly lady waits for her family to be found under the rubble of a building, the entire section of which was destroyed due to a Russian attack. The death toll in Kyiv has risen to 11 people, and it's different numbers that the death and casualty toll depending on what time of day you're looking at which article. That is what Russia brought to Ukraine, to this lady who they'd be happy to eliminate as well. Russian forces bombed the center of Ukrainian city of Kramatorsk this afternoon, partially collapsing this 5-story building. That is what Russia wants to bring to Ukraine. More of that. The Russian state propaganda agency RSI Novosti, run by Kilslev and Simonyan, published an article authored by Kirill Strelenkov. It was titled, "There is no other option." Listen to this. There is no other option. No one in Ukraine should be left alive. This is what the state newspaper is publishing. The state newspaper. This isn't just some random nut job somewhere. This is state newspaper. All deadlines for awakening have already passed, and we will no longer call or persuade anyone. If people are consciously and gladly ready to die for their masters, that is their choice. The problem is, laced panties are of no use to the dead, Strelenkov wrote. The Russians are not shy about publicly declaring that their goal is the genocide of Ukrainians and that this war was unleashed specifically for this purpose. And you know what? What's happening at night is only making sense in light of this. It doesn't make sense if you think you're just going to, irritate the population to the point that they rise up against Zelensky. That doesn't make sense of it. Here it is. This is carried in the Kyiv Post, just summarized. So I'm going to look at the little summary bits. There's no other option. No one should be left alive. And these Ukrainians are happy with their fate. They're ready to die for what he derisively calls the best army in the world. The peace marks an escalation in Russia's dehumanizing war propaganda. The rhetoric reflects long-standing Kremlin narrative designed to strip the Ukrainians of agency and portray its people as expendable. Russia's war effort has increasingly relied on genocidal framing, echoing prior statements by state officials and propagandists that they deny Ukraine's right to exist as a nation. So if that's the case, then what's happening here makes sense. The buildings in the background, the just destruction all around, it's It's intentional. It is actually going according to plan. I mean that in a sarcastic way, but it's true. When they say it's going according to plan, that's what the plan is. Today saw the highest number of children injured in Kyiv in a single night since the start of the full-scale war, according to Mayor Klitschko. 6 people are confirmed dead, including 6-year-old boy, as Russian missiles destroyed a residential building in Kyiv. Among the wounded are 9 children, the largest number of child casualties for Kyiv. So again, the Russians have this strategy now that they've shifted where now they're going after particular cities really hard. And so they went after a few different locations, but primarily Kyiv from multiple directions. And they're trying to just reduce whatever cities they're going after to rubble. There was a Russian attack on the main mosque of the Religious Administration of Muslims of Ukraine, UMA, and the building of Islamic Cultural Center in Kyiv last night. Preliminary reports indicate the use of cluster munition with shrapnel. Thankfully, no one was injured. And Russian school children are the ones building these attack drones. Well, I mean, that and international foreigners who are here trying to get a better life. But yeah, school children are there building these drones in an internship program in Alabuga. There's effectively only one immediate solution, serviced by a single weapon system that can solve the massive Russian drone attacks in Ukraine that killed numerous civilians and hit the production facilities at Russia's Alabuga drone factory. And they have to do that and hit it hard and stop the supply chain from being able to be used. And the Russians are trying to get to 1,000 or 2,000 of these drones a night. And you saw the destruction with just 300 when most of those 300 were shot down. And while you would say, okay, most of it was shot down, that was a good night. It was also a good night for Russia because you saw the destruction that you saw. Zelensky calls on the international community to support regime change in Russia. Otherwise, he says, even after the war ends, Moscow will continue to destabilize neighboring states. I'm not so sure that even if there was regime change that the Russians would stop, because culturally they just seem to think that this is a good thing, that this is the way that Russian culture works. Ukraine's foreign minister after last night's shelling, quote, Trump has been very generous and patient with Putin. Remember, there's 8 days left until these sanctions are supposed to kick in. And we'll talk about the sanctions and 3 big stories tonight. Sibiha called President Trump's for immediate maximum pressure on Moscow to end the war after this Russian strike on Kyiv that killed 8 people, including a child. And look at the damage to the building. Today's strike by drones, well, the Ukrainians were hitting back. They went after Radio Zavod in Penza, Russia, key military comms factory. That's what you're supposed to be doing, is hitting your enemy's military supply, military logistics, communication hubs, communications, not just communications, but transportation hubs, that sort of thing. Ukraine's drone offensive pounds Volgograd-Rostov railway again. That's a railroad hub that has been used by the military rather a lot. And yeah, they're going after it again. That makes sense. Going after civilians, it's different unless your intent is to destroy the civilians. Okay, let's look on the battlefield. 1,070 Russians off the battlefield, 1 tank, 1 armored fighting vehicle, 16 artillery systems, 68 vehicles and fuel tanks. All these numbers are pretty low. But engagements and casualties are both above the 7-day average. And the losses that Andrew Perpetua could identify for the 30th were about 1-1. It was about equal. Across direction, Russian invaders conducted 49 assaults. They're really after Bakros. The Russian military just keeps going after that, and they're going to keep going after that, and they're going to expend their people trying to expend Ukrainians. And the Ukrainians, on their part, are doing the best that they can with what they have, and they're in a pinch. They really are. I mean, it's looking pretty rough. Russian monster turtle tank here. It's almost embarrassing if you're a tank to have all that on you, but if that's what it takes to survive, that's what it's taken to survive. I'm sure there's some way a drone's going to slip under there and do something, but Belova unit of separate presidential brigade has showcased its first use of a drone armed with a grenade launcher against Russian assault troops. Okay, so that just happened, and I don't think it's very long before we see drones with multiple rockets being fired from drones, like little drones with that kind of thing, and yeah, it'll be there very soon. Darth Putin, the Western idea of trying to contain Russia to within Russia, is a sort of neo-imperialist warmongering that started all of this. He's got a way with words, that guy. All right, just a couple of last things. Here's a hard day's night when you have a combat cats that are here to massage you at the end of the day. And then finally, Jake Bro's fundraiser. It's almost complete. He's at yesterday when I showed this, it was at 950,000. I think I showed it last night. I don't recall. 950,000. If we just refresh, now we should be getting closer to 1 million. We're $995,252. You could be the guy that puts the fundraiser over the $1 million mark. I will put the link below if that's something that you want to participate in. Jake Bro has done 5 of these, five $1 million campaigns now, and that's just awesome. All right, my friends, that's all that I have for you at this time. Thank you for the time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes, and thank you. Put your comments below. Do you think I'm onto something here, that it's not just harassing the population, it's actually just trying to destroy Ukrainian civilization, Ukrainian livelihoods, Ukrainian cities, Ukrainian whatever. I think that's what's going on. Tell me if I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong, right? Put it in the comments below. Tell me what you think. Thank you for the time, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.